Okay, so today we're going to very briefly talk about imagery, which is another one of our literary terms that we actually use quite often and probably don't even realize that it's going on when we read a story. So what is imagery? Imagery is how an author uses words or phrases to create mental images for the reader using the five senses. So we know the five senses: sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. And so when you're reading, how an author describes a setting or a character or any event in the story that uses these five senses could be considered imagery. So imagery, it's got two main purposes here. It's going to help readers visualize and experience the author's writing and hopefully awaken your sensory perceptions. And it helps to establish the setting, the mood, and the tone. So basically this is creating the imagination in your head when you are reading any type of story, how you create these mental images, these pictures in your mind based on an author's description. So best thing to do is look at a couple of examples here. And these are actually some things that we've already read from the Odyssey. The young dawn with fingertips of rose. We talked about that in class a little bit the other day, about how this is actually describing the sun rising, a new day beginning and the sun rising. And so the young dawn with fingertips of rose, and so that gives you the mental image in your head of the sun's rays being like fingertips. They're rising up into the air with a rosy red color, and so you have this mental image of the sun being like a hand and rising up. Another example that is certainly, I hope, created a mental image in your head when we read this together was from the Cyclops episode. Neither reply nor pity came from him, but in one stride he clutched at my companions and caught two in his hands like squirming puppies to beat their brains out, spattering the floor. Then he dismembered them and made his meal, gaping and crunching like a mountain lion, everything, innards, flesh, and marrow bones. So again, this passage should have created a mental image in your head of the Cyclops grabbing two of Odysseus' men, smashing their brains out onto the floor, and then eating them. And so here we have some sensory being used in this passage because it talks about how he did not speak, so there was silence coming from the Cyclops. He clutched the companions and like squirming puppies, so we get the mental image of the guys moving around in his hand trying to get away from him, beat their brains out, spattering the floor. So a very gross mental image here, but the mental image of when he bashed their heads onto the ground, their brains went all over the floor. Then he dismembered them and made his meal, gaping and crunching. So we have the visualization of hearing the crunch of like a mountain lion crunching their bones and just eating them in a very grotesque fashion. So we're going to do a little bit of practice with imagery. So in your notes you have a section in order to do this. So this right here, I want you to describe this object. Take a second to describe this object. All right, how many of you just said basketball? That is true. This is a basketball. You probably thought of some other ways to describe it, but you probably use the word ball, or you could say it's an orange basketball or just an orange ball. But that's probably the words that you use. Now, I want you to take a second, and I want you to describe this image using the words, without using the words, basket, ball, orange, or round. So you can go ahead and pause the video for just a minute, and then you can describe this object. Okay, by now you should have unpaused the video, and we can go ahead and move forward. I want us to look at a couple more images, and on your notes you have areas to write your descriptions down. I'm going to show you a few paintings, and I want you to, as best as you can, describe what's going on in each of these paintings. Now, I have not given you any context. I have not given you any clues as to what these paintings are about, but I want you to describe them and try to think of the five senses here that you can describe everything that's going on. So here's the first painting. So you can pause the video and take a second to look at this first painting. Now take a second to pause the video and look at this painting. Now take a second to pause the video and look at this painting. All right, after you have all three of your descriptions, you can go ahead and submit your notes, and look forward to discussing this with you when I see you again for class.